Okay, so there is a lot of vocabulary here that we want to make sure that we are learning. The the vocabulary that we start with is unemployment rate, and so we want to start with our formula there. Hold on, this isn't working. Are you guys able to hear me right now?
You're low, but we can hear you.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, good. Okay, so our first little tidbit that we want to learn here is the vocabulary that is related to this unit, because we're going to be now calculating unemployment rate. We learned about our types of unemployment. Now we want to learn to calculate it. In order to calculate it, we have to make sure that you can do the formula, which is the unemployment rate equals the number of unemployed divided by the civilian labor force. The CLF stands for civilian labor force. The civilian labor force is the group of people in the United States that are willing and able to work. And so before we go forward, then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we understand who is in the civilian labor force. The civilian labor force starts by including people that are over the age of 16. It does not count people who are in the military. You cannot be retired. And the bottom line is you must be willing and able to work. That is the bottom line for civilian labor force. You must be willing and able to work. And basically what that means is you must be what they call actively seeking employment. If you're not actively seeking, then you don't count. I mean, use my wife as an example. My wife, she was a stay-at-home mom from 2002 through 2009 for 7 years while she stayed at home taking care of our children. My son was born in 2002, my daughter in 2004, and she was a stay-at-home mom during that time. So the box up here then represents the total population of the United States. So this over here is the total population. And what we need to do is look at the total population. We have to scratch out the people that don't count, and then everybody else that is there counts as what we call our civilian labor force. So without further ado, then let's just take a quick look. And so the 2 million military personnel, they are not counted. So I'm just going to scratch them right out. The 6 million service sector workers, they are people that are working. Service sector means like you're working at retail, like a clerk at Walmart or Walgreens or maybe McDonald's. Children under 16, they are out. 1 million adults seeking, they are in. 2 million retired workers, they are out because they are either not willing or they are not able. Now, you could unretire, in which case you're back in. So if you are retired but you're working as a greeter at Home Depot, then you're not retired. You count as a working member of the civilian labor force. Manufacturing sector workers are in. The teenagers not seeking are out. Teenagers employed part-time are in. Part-time does count. Teenagers seeking employment are in because they want to get a job. Unemployed adults not seeking is the key word here. They're out. They have to be willing and able. That was my wife once upon a time. Now, finally, we have the 1.5 million government sector workers. They are in. They're in because that's people like me. And honestly, down the road, something like 1/3 of you will most likely be government employees. And so to calculate the civilian labor force, then we have to add up what we just did. So we have 6 million service sector workers. We have 1 million adults seeking, 2.25 million manufacturing sector workers, 500,000 teenagers employed part-time, 250,000 seeking, and then 1.5 million government sector workers. So the sum of this is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.5. This is 11.5 million members of our civilian labor force. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.5. That's right. So 11.5 million members of our civilian labor force. So we are halfway now to calculating our unemployment rate. Remember, the unemployment rate is the number of unemployed divided by the civilian labor force. If you guys were here in class, I would have had you hold up hands. We would have moved people around. And we would have used this much more powerful visual. We're stuck with this because of remote learning. So here's the next step. From this group, we have to find the unemployed. To be unemployed, you must be in the civilian labor force. Another way of calculating civilian labor force is number of unemployed plus employed. Unemployed plus employed equals civilian labor force. So like these unemployed adults not seeking are not unemployed because they're not seeking. To be in the civilian labor force, you must be actively seeking. So from the group, then we have 6 million service sectors, they are employed. Then we have adults seeking, they are unemployed. Manufacturing sector are employed. The 500,000 teenagers are employed. The 250,000 are seeking, so they're unemployed. And then finally, we have 1.5 million government sector workers. They are also employed. So looking at our unemployed, we have 1.25 million unemployed. So finally, if you look, we have our numbers. We have our CLF and we have our unemployed. So now we can use the formula. So remember, the unemployment rate equals the number of unemployed divided by the civilian labor force times 100. So we can just punch these numbers in. The unemployment rate then equals 1.25 million divided by 11.5 million times that 100. And so I'm going to need to get a calculator here for this. Let's see what I can do. I'm going to get my phone out. There we go. Here we go. Okay, so looking at my calculator, what do we say? 1.25 million divided by 11.5 million equals 10.86 blah 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 times that 100 to convert this to a percent. That is 10.869562%. We will round that then to 10.9%. Round unemployment to the nearest tenth. The unemployment rate in this nation is 10.9%. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you calculate unemployment. You tell me real quick, is this a good or bad unemployment rate?
Bad because
this is catastrophic bad, as a matter of fact. Because it's supposed to be what percent? Do you remember? When we are in the business cycle, what percent are we supposed to be at?
5%.
Right, 5% equals your frictional plus structural, and they were at 10.9. That means minus that 5, that leaves 5.9% of cyclical. What must that mean we are on this graph if we have 5.9% cyclical unemployment?
A recession?
Absolutely, very good. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the heart and soul of this particular style of assignment.